find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
The best for your baby is at thebesttoys.com. From the best strollers, car seats, baby carriers, high chairs, booster seats, rockers, jumpers and bouncers, walkers, baby blankets, feeding accessories, bathtubs. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship McLean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 332-BABY. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God, so we cannot have a stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim,
right,
or the man has been the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI. Worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
WESN.
Hi, I'm Claudette, radiographer at the radiology departments at the community hospital. We offer high-quality service with state-of-the-art equipment in X-ray, ultrasound, CT, and mammogram. Come, our friendly staff awaits you.
Give us a call at 235-5479.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
A lot to get through this morning, so we'll start off with the good. Because every now and then, our boys in blue, or in gray, or in plain clothes, or in fake uniform, let's not go into that. Every now and then, national security does get a win. More on that in a little bit. The win that I'm speaking about is apparently 180 kilograms of cocaine valued at over $250 million. It was seized from a vessel bound for St. Martin. It was intercepted by our Coast Guard. It was escorted to Stavros Bay. The police then boarded the vessel. It came from Guyana. It's a shipping vessel. This is some good stuff. Now, the thing is, it seems as though one of the quotes is this: unexpected change intensified law enforcement scrutiny. This is with regards to the, I believe, with regards to the nature of the shipping. Because the departure schedule was changed and the vessel, I guess, it left earlier than expected. Agencies strategically tracked the vessel's movements, prepared to intervene. Now, while this might seem like a win for boys, and to some extent, hopefully it is, one of the things that we can't overlook is the fact that apparently the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and the U.S. Joint Interagency Task Force South were involved. Joint Interagency Task Force South apparently includes, just with a quick cursory look, law enforcement agencies from the states as well as potential forces from SOUTHCOM, that is the U.S. Southern Command. More or less, they're in charge of all U.S. military assets in this part of the world, south of the United States, literally. So we're looking at the Caribbean down to South America. Now, to what extent was there intelligence necessary for this? And then there are further questions we could ask, but you know what? Let's not be all negative on this topic. Let's just kind of take the win. To some extent, it doesn't necessarily intercede with the drugs locally, but it should potentially harm distribution channels, or rather, that's what we would like to think. But I'm not even getting to the full cynicism on this story. Just the minor cynicism is that, to what extent will they barely feel it? I mean, somebody will feel it, but the organization, the criminal organizations on a whole, will they really feel it? To some extent, they have to account for some loss of product, quote unquote, to put it in a very benign way. That's the good. What's the bad? The bad is apparently there is an inmate sustained injuries reportedly after he was beaten by prison officers because he attacked prison officers in the conduct of lawful duties. And apparently he died in the Arima General Hospital. This is in the maximum security prison in Aruca that it happened. He collapsed at the prison's infirmary after the beating, and then he died at the hospital. The prison service says an investigation is ongoing. The problem with that, and this is why it's the bad, maybe you could argue this is the ugly, or this is both combined, is that we've had other situations in the past where we had not necessarily concrete evidence, but reasonable evidence to suggest that the scenarios presented to the public were potentially less than authentic, potentially. Have we heard anything from those situations to give us a reasonable resolution? No. Reasonable resolution doesn't mean that the prison officers involved are arrested and charged and punished and all of that. Reasonable resolution means we have an explanation that will not just it's acceptable to us, the public, but also that will allow us to feel as though there's no issues here. Whoever needed to be punished was punished, whoever was innocent, and we basically unturned all of the stones to find out all of the information. We got the truth, and the truth has set us free. But that, to some extent, did not happen. So now we have a situation where it's hard to just have the benefit of the doubt. We already have heard, look, to some extent, some prisoners are involved. Not prisoners, sorry, prison officers, right? There's suspicion with regards to the prison service. What do the unions say? Don't just charge the little man, go after the senior officers too, which is a hell of a thing to say, as opposed to saying we're innocent. You're saying, nah. Go after the guys at the top too. There's stuff to smell, that smells rotten up there. So what are we supposed to think now? It could very well be that this prisoner was off his rockers and attacked the prison officers for no good reason, and they responded with necessary force because he was going all out, like a crazed animal, because locked up in there, he turned crazy, right? Which, that and all, if that is the case, then we have to ask the questions, what are the conditions in these prisons to potentially cause prisoners to do this? But that's all a speculative scenario. But we don't know that for sure. We can't make that assumption. Not in light of, I don't know, recent history. This is the problem with transparency. When you deny it, it will work against you. That is to say, the lack of transparency. Eventually, it will work against you. You'll get away with it the first time. And then the second time, people will start to say, something looks funny. And then by the third time, they'll start to assume you're lying. Even when you're not. So in this case, I think we've reached the point where no one is really going to take what the prison service says at face value. Not that they're going to assume that the prison service is lying. They're just going to say, I don't believe whatever you're saying, and I would like to find out the truth, whatever that may be. That, at least to me, that would be the reasonable limit of what you will say. There will be the unreasonable ones who will go straight to the whole, nah, they kill him. And to some extent, I could try to caution fellow citizens from going too far with the assumptions, regardless of, I mean, even if that's the eventual truth. We don't have enough to say that it is, but I can't stop people from assuming that assumption. That is the mother of all mistakes. That's a polite way of that saying. Now, that's the good and the bad / ugly. So what do we have left? Well, the new. That's, yes, I'm adding a fourth classification. Or actually, no, we're not any new just yet. That's for the daily review proper. Maybe this could be the, I don't know what to put this under, to be honest. Some people might want to put this under ugly. That might be too strong of a term to put it. Of course, there's the whole UK visa situation. The Prime Minister has responded for whatever reason. These are the reports of how they're being framed. This visa situation proves once and for all the need for TNT to leave the UK-based Privy Council. I understand where one might think those two things are connected. And to be honest, here's the best part. If we think this will be, you know, we will move on from the Privy Council and we'll show them Brits. As far as I am aware, last I remembered, the Privy Council would very much like for us to move on from the Privy Council. They don't want to have to deal with us anymore. And more importantly, if we move on from the Privy Council, we won't have people going to the Privy Council to, you know, take up matters. UK immigration will have one less situation they'll have to deal with. So I kind of, first of all, from the practical side of analyzing the situation, the two situations, it's not really one situation, it's two. The visa situation and the Privy Council matter, whether we go to the CCJ or stick with the Privy Council, those are two separate things. They are not connected. Just because, you know, UK is, you could find UK somewhere on both issues, that don't mean they're the same thing. You know, you could find corruption on, you know, in the history of both political parties. That don't mean they're the same thing, right? That is somewhat me being facetious or silly or what have you. But if you're thinking, oh, well, you know, this is just the visceral response because, you know, we want to feel good about ourselves, well, the joke will be on us if we think this will do anything to the UK. So I don't get it. I don't get what this will help accomplish, what this will help achieve. If anything, it will isolate us further from the United Kingdom, and maybe, while in a very insignificant manner, further push us away and probably make it harder in a very minuscule way to reverse this visa requirement, as opposed to having one situation where, anyway, let me not go into that because that's some real nitpicky politicking, so let me not go into that. But the last thing I'll say with regards to the my whole monologue, opening monologue, the Prime Minister did say, and I'm surprised that this was allowed to go to the public, that one thing matters in the coming weeks and months, and that one thing is winning the next general election. There's a part of me that I understand that to a party, to the core of the party, not to the party supporters, but the actual people who work in the party, right? That's their job. That's the one thing. Technically, for government ministers and MPs and senators, that shouldn't be the thing. I mean, it should, but it shouldn't, right? It's one of those tricky situations where, well, at what point your priority of winning the election, what does that mean with regards to running the country? One mountain cannot have two tigers. One servant cannot serve two masters. One politician cannot have two agendas at the same time. I get it, an election is coming up, it'll be kind of foolish to say, don't worry about winning the election, govern the country first, and, you know, once you do a good job, the voters will see it and vote you back in because you're the best choice. Now, voters ain't that most voters are not that sophisticated. Let me correct myself before I say something in error. Most voters, by most voters, I mean around the world. But at the same time, while I understand that the world doesn't quite work that way, how about let's not say it publicly? First of all, let's not admit. There are certain things just don't admit publicly. Because on principle, and if you want to say that you're people of principle and you stand on values and doing the right thing, you should, even if it's, you know, even if it doesn't mean that much, even if it's not necessarily practical, even if we might not even necessarily believe you, part of leadership functions are to still go through the motions, put up the correct front, have the correct, be perceived in the correct manner. But then there's also the non-cynical, how about we just do the right thing for the sake of doing the right thing? Because this is the other side of the coin when we say an opposition party whose only campaign promise and whose platform is to vote out the incumbent, well, you're not prepared to run the country. And when your whole thing is, we need to win the election, that sounds very similar. Not, we need to get good ideas and inspire the people and lead them to the future. No, we need to win the election because that, and you see, once that's your mindset, you become slave to that. That's essentially how good people start to get corrupted. Because you don't go from upright citizen to corrupted politician overnight. You start off somewhere along the line when the whole system starts to touch you. All of a sudden, you realize it's hard to do the right thing. Then at some point, someone convinces you, well, you can't change nothing if you don't get voted in. So you have to bear with it and put up with it and participate in it until you're elected in. And then your naive notion of then being able to bring through change will be shattered by the reality of you're now trapped because we have dirt on you. That's the full cynical explanation. That's what it potentially sounds like. And then everything Stuart Young has been saying for the last couple of months until the election, the meaning, the foundation underneath it, will he actually get it done? Are these promises going to be kept? To some extent, I don't know, but it doesn't seem so because one, history says they're not going to be kept, and two, the only thing that matters now is winning the election. The implication of such a oversimplified statement, and this is an oversimplified hypothesis, speculation, you know. When you say that one thing matters, the election, that means that everything else, right, is implied to be pushed to the side. Things like integrity, among other things. I'm not saying that the PNM is going to basically send out their presumed political leader, the head of the party for the campaign trail, have him make a set of promises that everybody knows will never be kept. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is, given the context of all of our political history and the fact that you have framed your objectives in not the best way, people could come to that conclusion. You don't actually have to be doing that. It just, to some extent, will appear that way. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll go into the daily review because, of course, that is just the tip of the iceberg with regards to the Prime Minister and what he has said just over the weekend alone. Technically, about more than one thing he spoke on. So we'll get into that and more after this. Stay tuned.
for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience. Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
And I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement. If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the game.
no.
Let's go to the last part.
As I speak, we are in the second to last hour, so there is 34 minutes and an hour left of this nation not actually having a prime minister. And technically, from what I understand, we also don't have a cabinet, in part because we have neither prime minister nor attorney general. Stuart Young will be sworn in as Prime Minister. It is expected at 10 a.m. at President's House today. The Prime Minister stepped down effective midnight, well, last night. And the Attorney General, just by the way, apparently he is expected, I don't know if this is confirmed, it has been reported by two media houses that he has resigned from the post of Attorney General. Well, resigned might be incorrect because essentially once the Prime Minister stepped down, I believe technically there is no cabinet because cabinet requires a prime minister and attorney general. Without a prime minister, there is no cabinet. Now, this is where if Hollywood were to make a movie, they would have some scenario where the terrorists would attack at just the right time and we'll have no prime minister and the country will be paralyzed. And I'd first of all like to say that that is not going to happen. No court/government system is going to basically be paralyzed on a technicality like that. The lack of funding for federal workers, that's a different story. That's a practical issue. Something like this, we don't need a full ceremony. It's the whole 10 a.m. sworn in with all the pomp and circumstances. That's just to make it look official and nice. But if there was an emergency, the president probably could get this done tout sweet, if necessary, right? And very informally, to some extent. So I just thought, you know, for people that I think this is a bigger deal than it is what it is. Now, the real situation is what will the cabinet look like moving forward? Because to some extent, with the obvious exception of, yes, there will be a new prime minister, the cabinet doesn't necessarily have to change, at least not yet. Again, though, it is expected that Reginald Moore will be moving on. And I don't know how true this is. We'll have to wait and see how it turns out. But once Stuart Young is sworn in as Prime Minister, we may see changes in the cabinet. Two of the big ones, at least with regards, amongst others, One would be MP Keith Scotland. I don't know how substantiated it is, but it has been reported that there is either some expectation or there was a leak, so I would call it a rumor, that Keith Scotland may be up for being Attorney General replacing Reginald Moore, which, dare I say, to some extent, he was more disappointing than even Faris. I guess in part because there were higher expectations for Reginald Moore, who commanded more respect than Faris Hawari going into the job, and unfortunately, it turned out the way that it did. So, MP Keith Scotland, to some extent, he has been part of the, I guess you could say, the national security apparatus of the government. And I actually don't necessarily have an issue with how he handled his communications post-bike and Pol Pot comment, which were possibly aimed at a specific demographic of the country, but unfortunately he didn't necessarily think about the wider perception, the perception rather of the wider society as a whole. But once he became the junior minister in the Ministry of National Security, he seemed to be conducting himself reasonably well, now with a more important role. To some extent, I would have thought he would have been the obvious choice for National Security Minister. But the person who potentially will replace Fitzgerald Hines, who reportedly was not there this weekend, at least at some of the festivities, that person would be MP Marvin Gonzalez. Almost forgot. The minister, well, I guess technically is no longer the Minister of Public Utilities. Apparently, he is rumored to be up for the post of Minister of National Security. Right now, I would argue the best communicator in cabinet, or maybe not the best communicator, but one of, if not the best, definitely has shown some better leadership traits than most, if not all, of his colleagues. This might be very important with regards to national security. If he could carry himself in a similar manner and hold the leadership of the various services in national security accountable, as he seemingly did with WASA, for better or worse. WASA probably still has its problems, but our water supply situation and certain aspects of water did start to look better. So now the question is this, are we losing out there in public utilities? Reportedly, and I didn't necessarily want to go through all the changes, but the Minister of Finance, or former Minister of Finance, I mean, technically, Colin Bird might be going on to public utilities. The current UK High Commissioner, or former UK High Commissioner, former Permanent Secretary in that Ministry of Finance, is rumored to potentially be the next. I want to get Vishnu Danpal is rumored to maybe be the next Minister of Finance, at least interim, right? We don't know if this is going to go beyond past the election. Probably going to need to move a senator to get him there. Oh, well, sorry, if Reginald Moore is stepping down, that seat will be available. So it's interesting to see how that may play out. Again, I would have thought Keith Scotland would have been natural to go into the Minister of National Security's post. Essentially, that's what they did the last time. When Stuart Young moved on, Fitzgerald Hines was the head of the joint, the JSC for National Security. I don't know why I can't remember what the acronym is right now. Joint Select Committee on National Security. That was Fitzgerald Hines' position. I can't remember if he was a junior minister or not. Now, currently, Keith Scotland, longer than he's been a minister in the Ministry of National Security, he has been the chair of the Joint Select Committee, like his predecessor, Fitzgerald Hines. I thought it would have been natural, particularly since he has already been involved in the national security situation. But maybe there's more to this than meets the eye with regards to maybe management style. Maybe this was just, there was more benefit for the two postings. Might not necessarily the best benefit the most benefit if you look at each posting individually, but if you look at it collectively, or it may be internal politics, I don't know. I would have thought Marvin Gonzalez, who was acting AG at least at one point, coming down to the end of Reginald Moore's term, he would have been more automatic to the post of Attorney General. But perhaps maybe this is an attempt to get fresh eyes in both situations, right? Maybe it is. And at least right now, allow me to be just a little bit optimistic. And I hope that both Mr. Scotland and Mr. Gonzalez will account themselves as well as they have, at the very least, in the good times in the last year, which are not totally bad, you know? So let's go with that. Meanwhile, a lot happened with regards to this. The Prime Minister himself, he had some outgoing messages, right? There you see him with Stuart Young, and of course there was a lot of, I won't go into it, but there were articles with regards to Stuart Young as a leader, the Prime Minister, and his legacy. And I'll just say this, there are potentially bad things with regards to Dr. Keith Rowley's legacy, and there are some good things. Again, the border during COVID will be one of the areas where they lose me. But overall, how COVID was managed, I appreciate it. I'm slightly surprised Terence Yalsing is back. I assume he will be Minister of Health moving forward, maybe not. But I also appreciate him, just wanted to give that shout out. But one of the things that I wanted to say, because I didn't want Stuart Young to be the candidate that would win just because we feel we need to have a non-Afro-Trinbagonian and a non-Indo-Trinbagonian as the Prime Minister to prove something to ourselves. I wanted him to win if he was the best candidate for the job. And I didn't necessarily know if he was, and I didn't want to say if he was, but to some extent, when I look at the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, and a lot of it is saying Stuart Young is just going to be an extension of Dr. Keith Rowley. And I know that some of my colleagues would not agree with me with what I'm about to say, but I always said, and I never changed from this position, despite all my criticisms of the administration and the snafus that they made, that to some extent, at the time, who were we going to get better than Dr. Keith Rowley? Because to some extent, his leadership was important given the situation that the PNM were in, the potential individual agendas and ambitions that were there, and to give stability also because the UNC has not necessarily been giving us that much stability. And to some extent, I think Stuart Young, I realized just this morning, I kind of have to have a similar opinion on Stuart Young. He's been central to a lot of the major things, a lot of the major decisions with regards to the governing of the country, at least central to a lot of the decisions that I could say were positive. He was front and center during the whole COVID thing. He was leading with regards to some of the press conferences on that, with regards to national security at the time, with regards to energy at the time. Yes, we could criticize him for a lot of things, but like many other ministerial portfolios, I do believe that there are limitations because the collective and the head of the government and potentially others, but we won't get into that, they will have their say. So, Stuart Young, yes, there are 2 or 3 individuals who I would have liked to see have the chance because I have direct reasons why I'll be confident in them. But you know what? One of the things that I do appreciate with Stuart Young, he has the intelligence. Hot mic incidents notwithstanding, he is a reasonably good public speaker, which compared to most politicians in Parliament right now, even with the hot mic situation, he don't have to be that good to be head and shoulders above most of them, right? And to some extent, the implication, at least so far, with the support of the General Secretary of the PNM, Foster Cummings, is that he will offer us a similar amount of stability, pragmatism, and one may argue he was one of the ministers that moved things along and kept the government running. So it just makes sense, right? We don't want a prime minister who's going to be there just because they want to be prime minister. We kind of have an example already of that, and it didn't work out so well for one of our arms of national security. I won't go into the specific details. The question, of course, comes back to when will Dr. Keith Rowley step down as political leader, and he's kept that vague. I believe he said he'll step down at the earliest. Now, the party will have their convention interim elections in September. Right now, the rumor or people believe that elections will be before that. I don't necessarily like that the political leader will be selected after the elections, but to some extent, it doesn't seem as though the country has an issue with it. The country as a whole, PNM supporters as a whole, but in particular. So I might want to have a principled stance of this is not the way it should be, but on all practical measures, what's the point if no one else is upset with it? I will point out, though, that this potentially should be something the country or society or PNM voters in particular should not have conceded so easily. But the thing is, the election is one thing. That's where I have the issue. Stuart Young being selected as Prime Minister, today being sworn in, as far as I'm aware, it's all within the legal rights of Cabinet. And the opposition leader, now, a couple of things. One, she says Rowley is betraying PNM supporters. Again, he is technically still the political leader, so he didn't step down from that, so he hasn't pushed his air in. Yes, Stuart Young leading the elections will kind of do that. But with regards to him being sworn in today, Kamala says she's going to skip it. Basically, then she's not going to say there's going to be any legal action yet. She's waiting to see what the president, what law she uses or what have you. And that kind of sounds like you're kind of trying to walk back from a position that's untenable. And if the UNC does go through a lawsuit, I would view it in a similar vein as the government taking the Auditor General matter to the Privy Council after losing in the Court of Appeal. It's futile. Why are you doing it? Why are you pressing an issue that I don't... maybe they will come up with a good argument that's correct and practical and all of that. But if it's something frivolous, I'm going to be, well, I can't say I'm going to be highly annoyed because at this point, I'm kind of numb to that kind of decision. So this is where we reach. To some extent, the opposition leader has a good point, but it's lost in whatever it is she's trying to do because she can't help herself throw everything at the wall and see what sticks, see what works. But by the time you figure out what works, you're throwing more stuff on the wall, so what works is lost to you. Because there have been important issues that the opposition have brought up, and they've never really done it effectively. As an organized body. And to some extent, that's why Stuart Young looks more appealing than Kamala. He's new, he's younger, and to some extent, he's more stable, which is why I think maybe it was a little late, especially since I think the implication was the PNM didn't necessarily want UNC cast out. Somebody said that. It might have been Rowley himself. But Rowley is now saying heavy-laden UNC members to join the PNM. He is inviting them. To what extent will that be effective? To what extent is it not just an election gimmick? But at the very least, the fact that he could say it, even if he might be contradicting himself or somebody else, but he's saying it, all right. It's framing the whole situation in a way. The NACTA poll twice basically pointed out to the fact PNM looking better than UNC right now. So, to some extent, it's not so much that Stuart Young is the best man for the job because he's so great. It's that he's all right. Maybe he could even be good. But the field, what else is there as an alternative? Get ready for 5 more years by default. And if you don't like that, maybe we should be more involved in our electoral process, internal to parties and then on the national scale, so that we don't feel as though the choices are not what we want. Of course, like I said, he could be good. We don't know. All right. We'll end it there today. Of course, there's the whole airport situation and some analysis out of that, and I do think some people are just a little too idealistic. I am telling people that they're being idealistic. It's funny. I am both pessimistic and idealistic depending on what day of the week and what, who is describing me. Can't win them all. But we will push the pause button there. We won't go into it because our media ambassador from the TTPS should be here, so we'll take a break and we'll welcome him on set. When we come back, stay tuned. This is Talking About WESN, your content capital. We'll be right back after this.
I am Dr. Delphina Ovid, your friendly neighborhood dentist. At Community Hospital Dental Clinic, we offer examinations which include x-rays, basic oral cancer screening, and a treatment plan. We also offer cleanings, fillings, extractions, root canal treatment, and complete and partial dentures. Remember, you don't have to brush and floss all your teeth, just the ones you want to keep.
Give us a call at 235-5479.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
Money is something we all deal with, but how many of us truly understand it? What if you could make better decisions with your money? Decisions that secure your future, protect your family, and bring you peace of mind. I'm Darren Jacobs, and I'm here to help you make sense of your dollars. Welcome to Dollars and Cents, the show that breaks down the financial world in ways that matter to you. No jargon, no confusion, just real conversations about money, your money. So join me every Wednesday at 10 a.m. on WESN for Dollars and Cents.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website, www.fanzonett.com, for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website, fanzonett.com, to make your purchase today.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
I'm back here on talking about the WSND Connect Capital Show. And Michael Small, joined by ASP Christopher Roon, TTPS Media Ambassador, with us here today as usual on Mondays. Good morning.
Thank you.
Acting ASP, well, you're stuck in limbo with that. Yeah. Okay, let me not ask you any more about that because I don't want to get you into trouble. Now, one of the things that you said that you wanted to speak to today when we exchanged messages yesterday, intelligence-led policing.
Yeah, it has always been part of the TTPS strategy in fighting crime. It has been one of the strategies ever since. You would have seen it under the previous commissioners.
I mean, ironically, getting the intelligence does not seem to be the problem. It's just translating it sometimes to evidence. It doesn't always work out. But we had two examples, at least this weekend.
Correct.
One you sent me. Now, I'll be a little bit nitpicky here because you apparently a set of firearms were confiscated. But just based on the image that you sent me, it's all pistols.
All right.
Right?
Yeah.
Although, ironically, most of the shootings that we've had in the last couple of months have just been with pistols.
Yeah,
so,
correct.
Maybe that's the meta and that's what we need to be taking up the street right now. Then there was the drug bust with the joint operation between U.S. authorities, the Coast Guard, and the police. So, hey, if there was ever time to talk about intelligence-led policing, I guess it's now, right?
No, but that's always been a part of TTPS strategy, intelligence-led policing. And you see it come up once in a while, or occasionally you would see it emerge with valuable information, leading to arrests, leading to confiscation of drugs, leading to confiscation of firearms and whatnot. In the Caribbean, including Trinidad, we have a problem with small arms because that's the weapon of choice, especially when it comes to murders. And now you're seeing it developing into high-powered rifles. When used, you have a higher rate of murder or even an increased amount of persons getting killed because of the use of the high-powered rifles. And what we wanted as the TTPS to do is encourage persons in society, in the public domain, to utilize all avenues to get the information because we get most of our information comes from the public domain. It's not just about a hint or a belief that some crime is taking place and some criminals are about. It's about information that we receive from members of the public, who we thank very much for this, and we ask them to continue to utilize the 555, the 800 tips and whatnot, Crime Stoppers. And you can transmit the information anonymously, which we would take, we would analyze, we would act on, and eventually we would be successful in executing whatever strategy we need to get those stuff off the streets.
And the thing is, like, yes, the big drug hauls, that were bound to go up the islands, that might be more impressive. But to some extent, what probably, this is an assumption, but I'll throw it out here, y'all really would love for a lot of people to call in, there's a handgun here, there's a shotgun there. It doesn't have to be big hauls, because at times,
it could be anything.
That might be, the big hauls, those might be hidden away long term. The stuff scattered about in different stash houses and whatever, those might be the weapons used actively and directly, that might stop violence.
It's not just about drugs and firearms and information. Because in the world of criminality, you see the connections. Sometimes we have received calls concerning children and elderly abuse. And acting on the information, we end up recovering drugs and firearms. I remember in one particular location, I won't say where, because we respond to a lot of reports with children. And at the location, the occupants began to behave suspicious. We literally went to see about children. And because of the location, we took the task force with us. And when we arrived there, based on their behavior, we recovered firearms at the location. I think it was about 3.
And this is one of the things, as much as I would say, both when you're here and without you, oh my gosh, these automatic weapons and it's so dangerous, and 30 rounds in a clip on average, full auto fire, more high-powered rounds, they could penetrate more material, whatever. But technically speaking, a 15-clip handgun or an extended mag, even worse, because then you're going into 30 rounds, right? That could be, under the right circumstances, just as dangerous.
Correct, because you can also adapt that weapon, that pistol, that semi-automatic pistol, to become fully automatic.
I mean, yes, they have a whole sorts of, I don't even know what the term is, but I've seen it where essentially you have a whole setup that will kind of turn it into a submachine gun, make
Correct,
it fully
yeah.
automatic,
Yeah.
use an extended mag. But even say you have a normal M9, and the civilian models, at least at one time, supposed to only have 10 rounds. But say you have a law enforcement military model, 15 rounds.
Yeah.
You shoot that into 17 rounds.
Yeah.
That into a crowd could be just as devastating.
Right.
Right? As an AK or an M4, depending on how the people are hit and what have you.
And also depends on the caliber of the ammunition used, because our 45 round does a lot more damage than a 9mm round.
Right,
because, and there are suspects out there with 45 rounds, and a 45 round can, with one 45 round can stop an engine, can stop a vehicle, can stop one shot.
Yeah,
That's
people like when in the movies they hide behind the car door.
Yeah.
That's not what it's like, right? Like you can't just, certain materials not gonna just automatically stop bullets.
Yeah.
Like a thin wooden table or anything like that. And even a pistol round.
Yeah, it can penetrate, yeah.
And then when it's in the house, like, it's kind of hard for a child that's small to, oh my gosh, look, an AK-47, right? But if it's a pistol, he could pick it up. He could do all kind of things with it. He could look down the barrel and pull the trigger by mistake. He could shoot his friend, what have you. Like, it'll be in places probably where he could discover it easier if it's not safely secured away. And it could still potentially, depending on the construction of your house, if it's a wooden ceiling into a second story, it could penetrate either up or down.
Correct. We've actually seen cases where firearm was used and the ammunition, the round was discharged into the air, and it came back down and injured persons.
Yeah.
So just shooting a warning shot in itself can be dangerous, because it can return back down to earth and penetrate somebody.
So I guess the catch-22 with intelligence-led policing is you can't necessarily have a lot of press releases to kind of market or advertise, hey, look at all of the intelligence-led policing that we've done, partially because sources and methods can't just be revealed to the public like that, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, the public is probably, sitting down in their house right now and saying, what intelligence-led policing? I haven't seen one part of that outside of the two recent examples, right?
Yeah.
And situations like that.
No, and I'll be honest to say that we don't always reveal the sources, to be honest, because revealing the sources, even indicating that it was information received from a particular location in public domain, could lead to some harm to those persons, because I have actually seen we have recovered high-powered rifles and firearms and whatnot, as I indicated before. And to even reveal how we got the information, whether it be by telephone or in personal contact with the informant, could lead to the detriment of that person. So it's not something that we want to divulge. And then we use technology in a lot of cases that we would not also want to divulge to the members of the public. But the information is important. And it could be whatever the information is, we need you to direct it to us, send it to us, and you can be totally anonymous about it.
Just because if people just take what you said they are face value, that's the advertisement, not to give information. So to balance that out, people need to understand, it's not as though not calling the police is the less risky option.
Right.
Not calling the police is potentially the riskier option.
Yeah.
Because as long as these things are within your proximity, violence could follow.
Right.
It doesn't have to just be kids picking it up. It could be, the gang war going on and they come and invade your house. Because there are crimes, right, when there's home invasions. Folks, don't you have questions when you see, why did they go after this family? Why did they go after this gentleman who seemingly is mild-mannered and ordinary? We don't know what might be stashed, maybe even unknowing to the victims. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't even know what kind of transactions took place that led to this incident and whatnot. There are a lot of information that is kept back from the public. But the important thing is to get the information. Let's not make it easy for the criminals. Let's make it very difficult for them. Let's harden the targets. Let's take care, look, observe, report it, and as much as information we could get and we could act on it that will be useful to members of the public.
I guess some people might say, well, if you'll have all these technological things and the SSA and intelligence and investigations under Suzette Martin and all these different things and you know, the regiments and what are they doing and the Coast Guard and what are they doing? Why do you need me to tell you where this stuff is? But
because the police isn't everywhere.
Right.
The police, as Sir Robert Peel said, the police are the people and the people are the police. We depend on the people to provide the information and to behave how they're supposed to behave in a modern society. So the police take their time from the public. So we also take the information, we take your information, we develop the information and act on it.
I mean, I guess this is one of those things where, look, you could have all the machinery that you want. You could have drones, you could have spy satellites, and radars, but you still need people on the ground.
And the most important thing, given information doesn't make you a witness. It doesn't bring you into the realm of court. It doesn't make you having to come and say, well, give a statement saying, well, I saw this and I saw that. Provide the information, we will act on it.
Intelligence-led policing. But what, I don't know, perhaps this might be one of those things where, yes, can't reveal sources, but perhaps maybe the police could try to reveal more about successes?
Yeah, I think they should, yeah. And that's why the Media Ambassador program came about, is to advertise the successes and to bring about valuable information to members of the public, including like the 555 and the 800 tips and whatnot. And as we get information and we publicize it, we bring it to the forefront.
I mean, I just find that the whole old school can't talk about nothing, you know, it doesn't always benefit the situation, because especially now when people are going to question these things. This is one of those things where too many of our institutions are basically, and I say this about the police in particular and politicians, right? The political environment which includes the public service, is one where transparency is not necessarily a thing, right? It's shied away from, and because of that, it's almost like an uphill battle now that the police service has to undertake.
We may not be transparent to members of the public, but when it comes to matters like these where we have arrests and we have seizures and whatnot, we must be transparent to the court. So every step of our investigation, we call it investigations, we call it inquiries, but every step of any action the police take with any information we receive, it must be transparent to the court. How we received the information, how we acted on the information, what legal paths we took to deal with the information, which may include taking out a search warrant. If we signed an affidavit indicating all the information we had, and if it was correct, if it was checked out, if we went about it the correct way.
And I guess the DPP will be like the first stage of this. He will look at it and say...
At any stage, from the beginning to the end of any serious investigation, we will go to the DPP.
All right. I mean, I just hope we could see more successes like this. I don't know.
Definitely, yes. And hopefully we will be able to publicize it a lot more.
Right, because one of the things that I noticed with the state of emergency, we've gotten some guns. Most of them are pistols, shotguns, homemade shotguns. Like, you know, it's just one of those things where the specter of automatic weapons is kind of looming in the background. Is it that once the SOE is over, we'll see greater violence? Or maybe the criminals got the message with the SOE and that, look, if we go too far, then the government might go further, and this is a lose-lose situation.
Yeah, I can't say from sitting here if it had any effect on the minds of the criminals at all, but I don't think it would impact them greatly.
This is more like they're just kind of waiting, and then we'll have to see what happens afterwards.
Yeah, and hopefully, whether or not the SOE is in place, we would continue to take the information and act on it.
I mean, that's, I guess, one of the key things there. The SOE did allow for certain things.
Yes, it did, yeah.
But with regards, to some extent, with regards to intelligence gathering, outside of, yes, you could search with the powers of the SOE, but you still need to know where to search. So to some extent, the intelligence apparatus, it has had to move it didn't really have, the SOE didn't assist it in all things.
No.
Just kind of towards the end of an investigation, really.
Because, I mean, we don't have a curfew implemented with the SOE, so it doesn't greatly remove the criminal element from the streets and from in the environment. They're still there. So the SOE just limited us to just searching without warrants, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Folks, I mean, we might have a new Minister of National Security in a couple hours, right? And who knows what's going to happen there.
Yeah.
And policies might change.
Well, it doesn't matter to the TTPS. We are governed by rules and regulations, standing orders, and the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, which does not change that often. And it doesn't matter to us who's the Minister of National Security.
I know it doesn't matter to you and the people around your level and lower.
Yeah.
Right? I will just say, right, the ASP Arun is, I will just say, I think it matters to some other people, but I will just leave it there. Right? All right. Let's take a break. When we come back, we will open up the phone lines. Somebody was saying we need to open the phone lines earlier. All right, okay, well, let's try that. Not Arun. Arun wasn't saying that. Somebody else was saying that. So we'll try that this morning. Stay tuned. This is Talking About the WSN. We'll be right back after this.
My name is Dr. Joanne Williams-Carroll, and I am the Director of Behavioral and Mental Health at the Community Hospital. At the Community Hospital, we believe in nurturing mind, body, and soul. Through our counseling and chaplaincy program, we will provide you with support and strength you need to help with your mental and emotional well-being. Give us a call.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist,
where good private health care is affordable.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
And we're back here on Talking About WSN, the Content Capital Show. Michael Small, joined by Acting ASP Christopher Arun, one of the brave men of the TTPS, who is waiting with bated breath to see who the next Minister of National Security will be. Right? Because I mean, they need someone to help, manage the expectations of the public. That's all I'll say about that. The phone lines are open. The numbers are up on your screen. You can call in and have your say on this and anything that I've spoken about and anything that we did not speak about. Feel free to call in. One of the things that, and this is true, do not be afraid to call in because you might have a question with regards to some specific situation that is pertinent to you. And I'm not talking about if you do want to call in to speak about higher end political things like what's going on with the government, the cabinet, the Minister of National Security, the Commissioner of Police, etc., etc. That's fine. But one of the things that the media ambassadors are here for and present for is if you have a question with regards to something to do with the traffic laws, something to do with property laws, something to do with when people are wearing out their welcome and they don't want to leave your property, when they're snooping and potentially, taking the mango from your tree that's on your side of the property line. Everyday things like that which you might need clearing up because you have a situation that you can't just ignore. Feel free to call in on that as well. I know there are a lot of people who technically watch the show and they're nervous to call in. But the media ambassadors, when we have them, of course, Arun is our regular ambassador, long-term ambassador, so he's here every week. if he can't be here, sometimes we have alternatives. All of them, they're here for that, to answer whatever question you may have. With that said, we wait for callers calling in today. I guess right now this is one of those things where a lot of people are probably going to be waiting for the swearing-in ceremony. I have to ask, do you know, because this is important for me, because it's on my way home. The president's house, is there going to be any, because I didn't look for this, so were there any special traffic arrangements with regards to that? Because technically it's coming in from the savannah, right?
Right, sorry, I don't know.
So I'm just I know that the president loves his ceremonial police horses, and I mean, thankfully it's at the president's house and not at the grandstand, because then it probably would have been a procession somewhere around 9:45.
No, I don't think it's all that, yeah.
I hope not. We have Trinity on the line. Good morning, caller, you're on here.
Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning to you, Sean M. Small. How you going? And good morning to Acting Superintendent Arun.
Good day.
Superintendent Arun made a statement just now that speaks to the functions of the police service. They have laws to obey, they have laws to be carried out, and then in that way they function as police. State of emergency or not, they have to stay on a straight and narrow and function in the way they're supposed to function. And I am sure ASP Arun and others of his ilk would try to keep themselves insulated from political influence. You know, and I would give myself liberty because it's my view. They would try. I've listened to him, you know, on your program, and they're trying to keep themselves insulated from the Balizechus police that are inside of there. You know, only doing things with regard to those are my words, sure. That's all right. I own them. With regard to, you know, trying to do the police work, trying to get things done. You had a retired officer on last week Friday who spoke about the unprofessionalism of some of the police officers when they approach members of the public at traffic stops, etc. You know, I think they're doing their best to improve and to lift what you may call it, the professional standards in terms of how you approach the public. And not because you're big and you're muscular and you have a tactical uniform and think you will treat the public any way you want. Right. The public is wary of that kind of tactical image, but the crime rate going up. So you have these big, strong black men walking around like if they just came back from Desert Storm, but they're not catching the criminals. So I would encourage your guest to continue the good fight, do the police work, ask for the equipment, ask for the assets, and you all go ahead and do what you have to do, regardless of whatever political influence that may come your way. Keep praying, soldier. Stay good and stay safe.
Thanks very much. And on the issue of customer service, the previous commissioner would have spent a lot of time and resources teaching and lecturing to officers about customer service. There's even a policy on customer service. So when an officer speaks or behaves a particular way outside of that policy, they are committing an offense against discipline. And I want to apologize to members of the public that when officers might go out of that their jurisdiction in terms of how they speak to them. You know, sometimes, you know, it might be simple as having a bad day, but you must always remain professional. As police officers, we must always try to behave professional with members of the public, even though we might be having a bad day. It's not the right thing.
Yeah. Now, there's a lot that I would just like to say here. This, to me, when Mr. Trinity was speaking, it just, one of the things that I always think about, and I think it does ring true with the police service, you know, usually in any sort of paramilitary organization, the guys that are doers, they don't want to be in headquarters with all of the they want to be in the field, right? So there's a point where they stop wanting promotions, and it seems as though some of the better outlooks and the guiding lights to try to get this thing fixed is coming from that mid-level leadership there. But to what are you and your peers who are at around your rank and level of experience, are you all concerned that perhaps you know, too many officers are going overboard. Because the flip side to that is, I do think in TNT, and it's not something unique to our country,
no.
but we have bad customer service like across the board.
Yeah.
We have bad customers too, let's be frank,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And the problems that the TTPS have, it could be societal, but maybe it's not. Like, this is one of those things where it's hard to judge.
Well,
so how concerned are you and your peers, the
No,
veterans?
we are very concerned that whatever behavior we display to members of the public must always be professional. So not because society, not because the police emanate from society, not because we come from society means we have to behave like society. There is a policy in how we behave as the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. So no matter where you come from in the society, whether you come from south, north, east, west, or central in Trinidad and Tobago, you need to behave a particular way to members of the public. And of course, we'll be concerned because we have children, we have relatives, we have family and friends that are outside in the public domain. And we understand that we sometimes behave in a way that we don't appreciate what we have. And we would like to better that. And any officer behaving, and I know that officers tend to want to be real, because the tactical officers, I used to be a tactical officer, and you're always on the go. You're always on,
Right.
You're always in real-time information and dealing with the information, and you're always on a real-time basis acting on information, and you're moving and you're moving and you're moving, and then you stop to deal with a situation that seems absurd. So a man might, somebody might break a traffic light while you're on a report, or while you're going to a location, and you know all you have time to do is stop and talk to them, and you might talk to them in the best of language, of course.
Right, this is one of those interesting things where sometimes it's not just that the police are joyriding and they have nothing to do,
no.
and then they stop the guy, and then why you didn't do anything? You just
Yeah.
left him. This is one of the things, and it goes back to when we were speaking about intelligence-led policing, where
Yeah.
it seems as though the public is on, and I'm not, yes, I understand the results are not necessarily, you know, leaving us in a happy place.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's not as though all police officers literally just eat donuts and,
No, of course
you know,
not.
use police vehicles for their personal conveyance to do
Of course
errands
not.
and what have you.
I've worked with very exceptional officers on the field and in offices and whatnot, and in stations. I've worked with officers I think are even better equipped and better trained than me in how they handle policing. They're very intelligent. I worked with officers who are masters. I myself have my degrees, but nonetheless, I've worked with more experienced and more intelligent officers in terms academically, and who handle situations better than me. And I think they should be applauded for how they behave. So, but the thing is that one bad event or interaction becomes the public perception.
Yeah, because we see the bad interactions. We don't see the officers
Yeah.
with degrees and masters and who put in, who have the right approach, the good stuff.
Yeah.
Usually,
and the
doesn't
thing
get
is, I've
published.
actually seen those officers interact with the members of the public in such a great way that, you know, they compliment the officers, but it doesn't make it to the public domain.
Right.
I'm sure there are a lot of people who experience.
One of the things I wanted to get to was literally the work rate, which I think a lot of people underestimate. But we have a caller from Shogunas on the line right now, so we'll take the call. Good morning, caller. You on the air?
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Amazing to read this thing about the British people. They have a problem and they address it, and we find fault with that, and I can't understand why. You know, that is my no people talking about we should get out of the privy council. I don't understand the logic about that. The thing about appeal, the optimum position somebody who would get it 30 years ago would be to have a world court, and that you have different levels that you could appeal to, and the most complicated would end up in the world court. And that is what this West Indian thing should have been, an interim measure, and that from that you could appeal to the Privy Council. Any questions or comments?
That's an interesting point. No questions. I don't have an opinion on that. I'm sure some people would say that that's redundant.
Why is it redundant? I am saying, I give you the logic of it. If you have a main world court And everybody have their different jurisdictions and they could appeal to it. So that the most complicated would get to the World Cup. What is we talking about?
I think the problem is at some point we kind of just go through the motion. The Court of Appeal, the local Court of Appeal is almost like going through the motions.
Well, what place does the Caribbean Court of Justice have?
Will that address that problem?
Well, I mean, so it's headquarters here, but we don't recognize it here. The debate is to make it the final Court of Appeal, replace the Privy Council. The professor is saying, why don't we insert it in between? And I guess to some extent, and he just responded to me, but I think too often people don't, if you're going to appeal, you're going to go all the way unless you're not money.
Yeah.
So it's almost like...
Oh, that's why you have to think about getting leave to appeal.
Look, even the government, they had a weak case with the Auditor General and they still went up to the Privy Council.
Well, then that is why you can't charge them.
So, I mean, the only thing is with regards to a world court, I don't know how practical that would be.
Why it shouldn't be practical?
Because the world has...
United Nations, of course, they don't
again, larger bodies like the EU, United Nations, they have yet to prove that they could actually manage things on a certain level properly, in my opinion.
I agree with that. Okay.
That's fair enough, but I don't have a lot of faith in those large-scale global organizations that are held together by duct tape and string, because that's what it feels like sometimes. But thank you, Professor. I will just say this. I think we are feeling a certain way because it feels like we lost something, right? That was part of what it meant to be a Trini. We had this connection to the UK. And the implication is, it was like we were entitled to it. And how dare they take what we were entitled to when we didn't realize it was not an entitlement. Technically, it was a privilege, because that's not our country, that's their country. And they gave us this privilege, right? And to what extent did we lose it fairly or unfairly? That's a whole other kettle of fish. But back to what I was going to ask you, because where I was getting to is that we may be underestimating the rates of work. Okay, maybe not all officers, because I'm sure somebody is going to say on the TV right now, but I know this officer and he's always lazy and he's in the station.
Right.
But going back to what I said about officers in the field that want to do the work, for better or worse, and this is not just limited, this is any organization, down to private sector business. Those are the people that's going to be, they want to be busy doing work, and in some cases they may be too busy doing work. I was shocked by the amount of police officers who you would see passed away and they're not that old and they had a heart attack or something. Like, this is post-COVID. This is not passed away from COVID. This is like 2024. And a set of officers in the papers well, not a set, but every now and then you'll see another one. Passed away young from natural causes. I don't know if it's stress or what have you.
Well, I mean, it's a very stressful job, and condolences to the family and friends of those officers that pass away often from such illnesses, diabetes and pressure and whatnot. But it does happen more often because the job itself is very stressful.
I mean, not to go into your personal situation in detail, but is it something to the effect of, well, I'm too busy
it is.
To see about this stuff?
Yeah, because from my experience, I mean, as a tactical officer on the field, who haven't worked with other officers, a lot of other officers, I have reached further than them because they invested, although I invested a lot of time into the field and neglected myself both physically and academically. At some point in time I said I needed to buck up on myself, and that's how I advanced my career to the stage. But other officers didn't. Other officers didn't take the opportunity and write exams and go to school, and they delved into the job. And they continued to delve into the job, and they left, and they kept the job as their number one focal point, and as their career. And they didn't develop themselves to reach anywhere.
Well, outside of their families and families of officers who know of situations like these, this is one of those things where I think the public isn't really aware that, yes, we could complain about the service all that we want, but there's going to be, it could be a minority or maybe even the majority, but a section where, you have guys, this is the vocation. There are teachers who do it because it's a calling. There are firemen, there are police officers, right? And it's one of those things where, look, we can't get you all more pay, we can't get you all better working conditions.
Right.
But one, we could cooperate and try to help deal with crime. And two, not assume that every officer is going to slap the phone out of our hands or shout at us, you know, on the shoulder.
That's uncalled for, that's unprofessional. A lot of officers, what you see now is the executive taking the mandate to the officers and seeing about their welfare, taking care of them now, as opposed to long ago when nobody cared or appeared not to care. Now you're seeing that development occurring, and you see a lot of officers now going into the realm of law. A lot of officers, although as I said, I always say that I went a different direction into criminology. They went into, a lot of them go into law and are now practicing attorneys and whatnot. So you see that movement, they started to develop now, as opposed to long ago when I took advantage of the opportunities I had at that time. You see now, you see more often now that they take advantage of the opportunities they have now, and they try to deal best with academically with what they can, and become attorneys and become criminologists and whatnot. I actually work with officers who are doing doctorates in criminology.
Like, you know, this is one of those things where usually it's bad form to, you know, toot your own horn. But this might be one of those cases where, to some extent, maybe the police service, maybe the Social Welfare Association, somebody kind of needs to toot the horn, in part just to show people that, look, it's not all bad.
No, it isn't.
There's good, and we could build on the good, and that's part of it. Like, if the public was aware of the good, then perhaps they might be more confident. Hey, I could talk to this officer. I could feel that there will be somebody that will listen to me that will also not put me in harm's way.
Correct, yes. And there are officers like that. The majority of officers out there are well-behaved, experienced, good-working, hard-working, honest officers. It is our minority that comes up in the public domain often, more often than not.
I mean, there's a part of me in the back of mind that's like the cynic, right? And a lot of people will be a cynic saying, is it really the minority?
Yeah.
And I guess you could say there might be levels to it.
Yeah.
You know, levels of badness. Some might not really be bad. They might just be caught up in day-to-day life and peer pressure.
And that's how life is sometimes. But I have always experienced that persons would call me for assistance, and I myself can't assist them based on where I am working.
Right.
So I call another officer in different areas every day. It happens every day. And those officers are 99%, 100% more willing than anything to assist those persons. So I think it's about reaching out to you're reaching to the person that you need to reach out to. And police officers are supposed to be there to assist you in almost everything that you're going through in terms of policing. And if you can't get onto that police officer, if you need to get onto somebody, you can get onto somebody else. There's always a senior you can get onto who will assist you or make sure that it's done.
Right, I think that's the key. Don't just stop at the first officer. You know, it's almost like shop around.
around. No, you don't shop around. There's a structure.
What? No, but don't just settle for the first.
No, because
right?
the officer.
If you're denied.
Because one of the things I've noticed is that a lot of the complaints come from officers who take your report and they don't give you feedback.
Right.
So part of the customer policy, the customer service policy in the TTPS is to give feedback. And there's a time frame in which to give feedback. I believe it's 7 days.
That was more complicated than where I was going. I was just going where if the first officer didn't want to take your report.
The thing is, the reason for the complaint is that the officer on the field or the person taking the report is so overwhelmed with the amount of reports that they get in, is that they can't give you feedback, interact with you on how you want. So there are fixed persons like the inspector in the station, the sergeant in the station that you could go to that would assist you to get that development in your matter.
Okay, we have San Fernando waiting on the line. Good morning, caller. You're on the air.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Pierre.
Good day, good day.
Coming to the end of this 3-month period of the SOE, the police service, what I have observed with this SOE, the police service has made more arrests, made more seizures, and you ask yourself, what was the difference between prior to the SOE and now? And I think you said it. The fact that you did not have to get warrants to initiate certain actions.
Yeah.
So it says to me that is an issue within, that is, and it really is one of the main issues with getting a lot of, getting the police to do a lot of actions is that issue of warrants. Now, and as you said, information is not always intelligence. Sometimes the intelligence that you have may not be sufficient for you to get a warrant.
Right, correct.
So now the management of the police service has a, what do you call, a benchmark now to see, okay, this is the area, the gray area that we need to deal with. Because without a curfew, and the criminal is going to do what the criminal is going to do. The police service has done a lot more, and you have seen a lot more from them within this 3-month period, and I really applaud you all for that.
Thanks. Yeah.
Now, when you go back to what you said just now about the about professional development within the service, that is where the management needs to look at the police service internally and come up with some new systems. Yeah. Because as I said, the front desk issue with those officers, younger officers who take reports and stuff. And one of the things that I have always been peeved about, not only in the police service but within the public service, is the fact that this amount, the people are allowed to not go on vacation and have these huge amounts of time, 3 months, 6 months, a year, and more, racked up there, and the people that manage these institutions do not understand that a person needs rest in order to regroup, to recuperate, to refresh themselves. That is why the vacation is there. Yeah. And if it is that you go for a lengthy period of time, and there's research to show it, lengthy period of time without taking that time off, it affects you mentally, physically, emotionally, and that is where they need to fix that situation.
Yeah.
I worked for a company in the past, an international company, when it was mandatory, and they told you why you need the vacation. It wasn't that you have to take it, but they went as far as letting you know this is the reason for the vacation. This is the reason for it. I had a boss one time that said to me, sick leave is not to take when you get sick. He said sick leave is to take to prevent you from getting sick.
Oh, okay.
He said if today you get this morning if you're not 100%, you get the next morning if you're 100%. He said take a day off, go by the beach,
right,
relax, go and check a friend, go in the market. He said do something to relax yourself, take a drive.
Yeah.
He said that prevents you from getting sick.
Yeah.
And that is one of the things that in the service I think, and it's a uphill battle for the manager because because they're not going to get the money to buy out people's leave.
No.
But to buy out the leave just in the police service alone.
Well, in the TTPS there is a policy on how leave is distributed and how it's taken, and they really try to manage it, to be honest. But you often have these
between carnival and state emergencies
and things pop up now, and because there are officers, including senior officers, who were sent on their leave because they built up too much leave or they built up a lot of leave, and the policy came into effect.
The problem is there will be senior officers that are sent out.
And when they send them on their leave, and then because of the SOE and because of the restrictions and because of the crime rate, they pull them back off for leave. So it's a kind of domino effect.
Yes, because look, recently you all had a senior superintendent, I wouldn't call his name, that was sent on vacation, and he had over 3 years vacation.
Right. Yeah.
And that is those
a TV show host. A TV show host. Or it was a different one, because we know that a certain TV show host had at least a couple of years. You know?
Yeah.
On a different network.
I'm not calling any names, sure.
Yeah.
But that is the thing, and that is some of the things that will help arrest
Yeah.
the stress.
Alleviate the stress.
And as I said, the other part of it, the professional development, is that there's supposed to be a program within the service where the people that manage the service will take a serious look at the qualifications of the staff, and then it should not be only I decide that I want to go and do a degree or
but
it should be a system within the service where they said, okay, here what's happening, especially with in terms of things like going on the range, and just the normal development where as an ordinary officer, if they're managing properly, they'll say, okay, you need to go and so on, so your time comes to do this and to do that, and just take the service up, just over, and it will take a lot of time, but move the service gradually to where we want it to go.
What I've seen
Have
recently,
a good day, gentlemen.
Thanks. What I've seen recently is that the TTPS did do a survey and did collect data as to your academic qualifications and took that into consideration in where they place in you now.
Right.
So if you have academic qualifications in let me say, dealing with canines, then canine branch might be your forte. If it's welfare, the social work department might be your forte. If it's
and there are many programs under that.
Yeah. So and children and whatnot. So you see the service tending to specialize now, as opposed to
because I guess in the past they didn't necessarily do that because they wanted officers to rotate.
Right. Correct. And it was an English model as opposed to the American model, which specializes. So in the States, and we're talking about centuries, or maybe not centuries, but a very old structure.
Yeah, it could be centuries.
It's a very old structure. And so now what you're seeing is the developmental officers are the priority of the executive. And you're seeing more input, and you're seeing more direction towards assistant officers to become qualified in certain areas. So we would send officers to be qualified.
But this is still fairly recent, and by fairly I mean a decade or less.
Yes, correct.
Right?
Yeah.
No, but
like 20 years ago, this was not the case.
Right.
No,
So it's not that the police said degrees don't matter. It's that they wanted generalists.
Yes.
They wanted to rotate.
And the thing is, a manager like myself, I became a manager when I entered the first division, and in becoming a manager, I had to manage my people. And one of the callers spoke about time off and whatnot. So you have to manage that. And so this is where the management and the TTPS comes into play. We have to help the subordinate understand their role and function, but their time management, their development, their self-development, their self-care, their professional development, their academic development and whatnot. And as managers, these are the types of strategies we must employ to get them to develop themselves holistically as officers.
I guess it's just one of those things where I first of all, as you specialize, getting replacements and temporary people to hold over your duties potentially gets harder. But the flip side, of course, you get better officers.
Yeah.
But then there's always going to be those officers, and you may have been one of those when you're younger, that, it's not just help. You don't just need to help your subordinates. Sometimes you need to force your subordinates because they'll run themselves around.
No, and if it's not the right fit for them, then we ask them to move on to a place that might be better suited.
Yeah, but I am going from the perspective of the officers that maybe just took it too far and their health got impacted.
Yeah.
And that's why we have officers. It's one thing to die from COVID during the pandemic. It's another thing to have a heart attack and the officer looks like he's at best fortes for the oldest, if not younger.
Right, and that's why they put and as they talk about health and wellness is part of the pillars of the operational and strategic plan of the TTPS, and that's why they put gyms in police stations and whatnot.
Yeah.
So even where I work, we have a gym, a 24-hour gym.
Yeah, but part of it also is a high-stress job.
Yeah.
Look, when I got high blood pressure, my cardiologist, he was concerned about my job.
Right.
Affecting my blood pressure.
Yeah.
I don't deal with murderers and drug dealers and people that might swing axes and ice picks at me, right? You yourself has been in at least one situation, right?
Yeah.
So I don't have to, even if you haven't been in a fight, You never know. So the tension of maybe somebody might attack me in this moment. You never know as an officer. You have to.
I remember I had a day I was working and I needed to go home to change to come back by 5 o'clock the next morning. And I didn't leave the station. I never left. And this happened often, too often, than. And I remember it was like 6 a.m. the next morning. So I worked the entire day and I went into the night. We got information and we continued to work into the exercise, which was about 4 or 5 the next morning. And then around 6 a.m. I was coming in with a prisoner. I was still dressed in my shirt and tie and whatnot from the day before. And I was coming with a prisoner because I didn't get time to stop, eat, or bathe. And my senior officer, I think it was Mr. Dulal, at the time, he's like, "Hey, Mr. Arun, you came to work very early." I said, "So I never left." I said, I didn't leave. So he was like, because he didn't expect me to be there, knowing that.
I mean, what kind of a boss is this? Didn't recognize you when you same clothes from yesterday?
No, he didn't recognize. Unfortunately, he didn't recognize. Right, and that is the thing. That is how policing. That is how dynamic policing is.
Yeah.
And especially when you're a tactical officer. So I was working CID, so you were dressed in shirt and tie because we work in daylight. So I'm no longer in tactical uniform, but we worked alongside tactical officers. And as the information comes in, we continue to work and we continue.
The investigators, they are the shooters.
And then we.
Not shooters, but yeah.
Yeah, and they subdue any threat that might come up for us. And what we do, we continue to work and continue, and that's how policing is. And that's what happens sometimes. You don't go home to your family all the time.
All right, so thank you for that. We have to end there. I'll just close by saying I will bet you money that there are other people in the public service who overwork themselves similar to some police officers here. And this is one of the things where I say, you know, they hold the system together. We need to do more to try to help them. I won't necessarily go into the politics, but that's part of the equation. With regards to the whole SOE and what's the difference, I think legislation could be the solution long-term there. Obviously, we can't have an SOE for the next 10 years. With that said, make today a good day. As Mr. Shaw would always say, remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. Stay safe, and it's nice to be nice. Even if you don't trust the police officer, it'll be safer for everybody. Just be nice, right? Even if you don't necessarily like the person that just gave you a bad drive. We will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.
Do you need treatment for obesity or any related abdominal procedures? The community hospital now offers minimally invasive laparoscopic surgery done by an American-trained, board-certified surgeon with over 20 years' experience. Give us a call at 235-5479 for more information.
The Community Hospital of Seventh-day Adventist.
When good private health care is affordable.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces flagship Mac Bean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.